Hey, this is Ren, Philly Overdosed, and today we're talking to
Andrew.
Andrew.
Yep.
Hey, Andrew. So, what's your age, man?
I'm 34.
34 years old. Where are you from?
Originally, I'm from a small town outside of Gettysburg. But my family is from Philly, my mom's side. My grandfather was born in Kensington.
How'd you end up down here?
So I ended up moving to Bucks County with my son and his mom. We had fallen out, ended up going to jail, and I paroled to Philly so I could be near my kid.
So you could be with your
So
kid?
I could be near my son, yeah.
So what was your childhood like?
I grew up in an upper class, middle class family. I mean, my dad's a doctor. I had a scholarship. I went to private school, Valley Forge Military Academy and College. I went to regular college, grew up on a farm.
So no childhood trauma, none of that?
When I was younger, I think I was abused by a babysitter. But for the most part, I mean, I think I had a better childhood than most. The one thing I think would have made the biggest difference in my life, and I guess if I had like any advice for anybody else out there, is just like talk to your kids. Like as a kid, I was always afraid to talk to my parents about anything like this, drugs or anything. You know what I mean?
Right.
Something you always hid. And then, you know, my friends' parents would let them drink and stuff. And I'm not telling you to encourage your kids to drinking and stuff like that, but my parents have a much closer relationship with my younger brother, who they acknowledged he was going to drink. So if you're going to drink, stay at the house.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
And they didn't do that with you.
Whereas with me, it was the oldest, so it was like you had to hide it and stuff, you know. And then
So you think that's
I think that's the biggest thing. I mean, even right now, I think I had some stuff happen, and I just kind of walked away from everything recently, and ended up in Kensington, you know. And but I think the biggest thing that can really help is like my parents don't know the difference between like completely turning their back and shunning their children to enabling and helping. You know what I mean? They're afraid of helping, and they're helping who's enabling. When, you know, I think the most important thing for any addict out there is for people to not think that people gave up on them, you know?
Right.
So, you know,
So when
call them, you know, call your kids if your kids are out here, you know, at Christmas time when you're walking around by yourself, the parents that had flyers up on trees and stuff, you know, please come home, begging their kids to come home, I think means a lot, you know?
Yeah. So your parents don't look for you?
No, not at all.
What was the first drug you ever did?
The first drug I ever did was probably smoke, and I drank, then I did pot.
How old were you then?
I drank when I was probably 10 or 11 years old, you know, snuck a couple beers here and there. You know, and you know, and then you just drink for fun, you know, you go out to parties with your friends and stuff, and
Sure.
out where I live, we have big bonfires, and you know, it's a good time and stuff. And then I did pot probably when I was 13 or 14, and I started growing pot. I got really good at it.
Did your parents know?
So I worked with an organization called NORML, which is the National Organization Reforming Marijuana Legislation, and I believed in medical marijuana a lot. I got Lyme's disease, and my family didn't believe in it at all until people in my family were sick with Lyme disease, and I gave them some pot brownies that I made, and it was the only thing that helped them.
Right.
And it changed their outlook on it. And I, you know, helped testify Congress and get the legislation changed. And I always wanted to own a marijuana distribution facility, but I kind of just got burnt out from that stuff too.
So then you went to hard drugs?
But the hard drugs happened. I broke my neck wrestling in college.
Oh my God,
I
how's that
I was
happen?
bridging, stretching my neck out, and a girl that I was dating pushed on my stomach, and she broke my C2 by accident. And they put me on Percocet for about 7 or 8 years. And I would take them because I'd feel better. I wouldn't be sore, I wouldn't hurt, I'd have more energy. But I was never really addicted to them. When Obamacare changed the laws, I had good insurance. When I'd have a back spasm, I could go to the hospital and they'd give me a shot. And I think I was still using drugs maybe more than I should have, but I wasn't a problem yet. But when they changed the laws, I couldn't go to the hospital and pay a $50 copay. I go to the hospital and it's a $2,900 bill. I couldn't afford it. I had a $5,000 deductible.
What about your parents? They didn't help with that?
Oh, the house? They probably would have.
Were you not living at home?
But I wasn't, no. I kind of tried to, like, moved out when I was like 18. I didn't get along with my parents real well. Like I said, I just didn't have a close relationship with them. You know?
Right, hold on a second. You were saying that your parents,
They probably would have helped out with it and such. I mean, I did stupid shit like, I was in a lot of pain. I'd be like laying on the floor crying, you know?
yeah, if you have a broken back, bro, I would
Well, I
think...
had a bone spur and I had a bunch of different diagnoses and like, doctors didn't believe me at first at what happened. They thought I just pulled a muscle because I was able to move and stuff, but I broke the little tab off the back of my neck.
So how did that affect you? You were able to walk, right?
Well, I was able to walk and stuff, but I couldn't like let my neck go limp because it would feel like I would be in horrible pain. And then after 6 months, I fell asleep. I woke up on the couch and my whole left side was numb. And that's when I went to the hospital. They actually did an x-ray that time. And they said, oh, it looks like you sustained a neck injury. And I'm like, no shit. I told you that before, And they started, I begged my doctor for pain medicine because I was in so much pain I wanted to die. I don't know what else would have been the answer, but I know that when I went to a friend and he gave me Dilaudid. I said, that's what the hospital gives me. Shit, that's great. For $10, it's way cheaper than $2,900,
Right.
And I was terrified of needles. Until I was 16, I'd cry. Just like fingernails on a chalkboard. And I had a phobia of them since I was a little kid because I happened to get them a lot when I was a child. He shot me up with that. I was like, wow, I feel so much better. I have energy right now. And I'm
It
not
was
in
an
pain.
injection?
He gave me a shot of Dilaudid. And I started buying the Dilaudid off my friend's grandparents. And I was buying a lot of them. And I was working and I had a good job. And I was spending maybe $500 a week and not too many people noticed the money was missing because I was making decent money,
So you just continued doing the Dilaudid?
Yeah, and I got hooked on the Dilaudid real quick.
How did you end up here in Kensington?
So I ended up fighting with my ex over custody of my son. Through some shady lawyer shenanigans on her end. They ended up taking my kid, even though I was an awesome dad. And that's another thing too, I wanted people to understand. I grew up with my dad drinking. My parents shunned me for being addicted to opioids. My dad's a doctor and he drank, and he would drink with me in the car as a kid. I never endangered
But then
my
you weren't
kid's
able to
life.
talk to them about your...
Right, because alcohol is not alcohol is just socially acceptable. I never endangered my kid. Every weekend I take my kid on, some type of educational field trip to Baltimore Aquarium, whatever. And it hurts a lot to be told, like nobody believed me that when we separated and she said I was on drugs. Nobody believed her that I was on drugs. I was on Dilaudid for 2 years. Nobody had any idea. They all thought she was a liar and they were pissed that she took my kid because he's a good dad,
Right.
As soon as people found out that I was using drugs, all of a sudden I wasn't a good dad anymore. And to me, it's like...
Instead of getting you help?
It wasn't that so much. It was just like, well, you're on drugs. Everything bad that happens is because you're on drugs from this point on, And she did some really shitty shit.
This is your ex?
Yeah, which ended up getting me incarcerated. I went to jail for a crime I didn't really commit. They took my kid. And
Do you mind if I ask what the crime was?
So she wanted, not get too detailed, I guess. I bought her breast augmentation for her modeling career. When she took my son, and her lawyer pulled some shady shit and took him from me, basically. After a judge ruled that I should be able to have my kid. I threatened to post a topless photo of her on Facebook if she didn't bring my son home. and I got charged with stalking because they were in the middle of that cyberbullying stuff.
Right.
And Bucks County sentenced me to 2.5 to 9 years in jail.
For that?
I ended up doing almost 4 years.
Oh my God. So how long have you been down here in Kensington?
And one other thing, it's really hard with the judicial system too, because they intimidate you and scare you into taking a plea deal when really I should have, I think, fought it, or they shouldn't have. I'm in jail with a kid that raped a 2-year-old kid. Went to jail. He went to jail for 2 to 4 years. I'm in jail for 2.5 to 9. You know, I was a good person. I was a good dad.
And she really let that happen?
Ruined my life. And then to get out of jail, I thought I'd be able to see my kid again. And she's more intimidated because I feel like I could have offered him a better life, like a sail and fish and hunt and ride horses and like whatever. She doesn't have any of those opportunities for him. And so, you know, she kept saying, if you do this, stay sober, I'll let you see him when I see him. After a year, I didn't want to. After a year, I just couldn't take not seeing him anymore. And so I told her, I said, listen, if you're not gonna let me see him, I'm gonna take you to court so I could see him again. Well, she contacted my parole officer and said I contacted the victim of my crime and I harassed them, even though I was professional and recorded everything I had written. And parole said basically.
So how long did you end up staying there?
They ended up threatening and violating me for parole if I contacted her again. And everybody says, you know, just move on, like start a new life.
Did you still love her?
No, and that was the problem. We had a kid, and the worst thing I thought the best thing for me to do was to stay, keep her in my life for my son's sake. The best thing I could have done was keep her out of my life for my son's sake, because the time that we were separated and I had custody of my son, it was the best time of my life. I was the happiest I'd ever been, you know?
Right.
But my grandfather had a thing on the fridge that said, the best thing a father can do for his children is to love their mother. And I thought that meant I need to make sacrifices for the benefit of my son. And that means tolerating his mother. And really, it was
Do you mind if we... No.
Okay.
So, yeah, we had to move because that music was so loud.
Yeah, I let her move back in with me. She begged to move back in with me, but it was really a ploy in order to
Cause more.
get me using again and to get me to move to Bucks County so she could negate the custody agreement. And when we moved up here, she filed to change the custody. I never knew about it because I wasn't served. I was working. She took the papers out of the mail. Never knew about it. So now all the money I spent for custody for us to have 50-50 was basically ripped up and in the wind. And
so when you got out of jail, how long ago was that?
I got out of jail October 2017. I'm sorry, I got out of jail October of last year. I saw my son at Easter because he was with my parents. She found out that I was there, pissed her off, so now she won't let my parents see my son either.
Wow.
Because we used to take him, he would go to the Easter at the shore every year. And it was like the best time I had with him. And
she just doesn't want you near.
and I've never done anything to harm my kid or anything.
Right, that doesn't make sense. So then what brought you here?
So my pops was passing away. I met a really awesome girl, a Colombian girl. Things happened, and
Recently?
my mom ended up causing some conflict in our relationship, and something happened. I don't know exactly what happened. Anyway, she ended up, we separated, and my pops passed away. I chose to move into a recovery house from my own house, which was a stupid mistake. While I was in the hospital, I was hit by a drunk driver with no insurance, which cost me my whole car, so I was out all the money. That's a whole other issue. But my roommate's friend robbed me for everything that I owned in my house, and they didn't really help in recovering anything. Philadelphia Police Department was like, "What do you want us to do about it?" I walked out of the house and couldn't find another place to go from there on out, and I've been homeless since.
That's how long ago?
October.
Of last year?
Of this year. October this year.
Yeah, 2021. So,
yeah.
So where do you sleep?
So, like the first couple nights, it was kind of weird. Like, it's like a reality shock, like, shit, I'm homeless, what am I gonna do? And I thought it was gonna be like a temporary thing. But I guess like my depression just spiraled, and you just am like, fuck it, you know?
So how do you get money to use?
So I help people sometimes, like worked for them and stuff, but it's hard. Like people don't realize that homeless people, like I'll be sitting on the train with them and I'm in a pair of Doc Martens and, you know, nice pants and a shirt still, before all my clothes got stolen. And they'd be talking about homeless people and I'd look over at them, I'm homeless, you know? And just, they would be in complete shock. They don't realize, like, when you're homeless, you get taken advantage of more than any other sect of people. So you get robbed all the time by other homeless people, I'd say once a week.
Do you get robbed by other homeless? Or?
Yeah, generally speaking, it's just gonna be other homeless people. The other day I had done a bunch of work for somebody and they'd given me a bunch of copper that I'd cut up, and I came down to cash it in, and it was 4:30 in the morning, and I got off the train and a guy held a knife to my neck with 4 other people followed me off the train and robbed me right in front of the SEPTA employee. And the SEPTA employee never stopped filing her nails, never called 911. So
was it because you looked homeless, or?
I was homeless.
Do you think it's easier for them to take advantage of you?
The police have told me. They've driven down the street while everybody's sitting on the sidewalk and asked us to fucking die.
The police said that?
The other day I gave a guy a CPR for 15 minutes because he stopped breathing. I tried Narcaned him. And I looked up and the police officer was sitting across the street in his car still texting on his cell phone.
Wow. So...
you want to know why this is a problem? It's because the police and the society has accepted that as long as it's contained in Kensington, it's fine, and that's what they told me. I asked them, I said, why don't you stop this? I said, these drug dealers are here. People are sitting, I'm a drug addict, and I don't condone people sitting there shooting heroin in their neck in public. I don't condone people selling drugs in public. I think if you fucking shoot a gun off in a neighborhood full of kids, you're a coward. And I asked the cops, I said, why don't you guys stop that? He says, we cut the head off of one snake and it grows 2 heads somewhere else. And
so they just said they're containing it, not changing it.
he says, what do you expect us to do, arrest everybody? But the issue is that they're promoting, and they're promoting this.
So what's your plan? Do you have a plan?
I thought I'd be dead already.
That's your plan?
I thought I would have died already, you know. I was just telling him.
And you've been out here since October. Your parents don't try to find you?
I was in the hospital for 11 days. I just got out yesterday. And I called my mom. I called my brother. I called my sister. My brother, he answered and stuff. My sister was too busy at work. But nobody called me back once while I was in the hospital. And it sucks being a disappointment to your family. But
I mean, bro, you seem so smart. Like such a nice guy, man.
I don't think people understand how hard it is to get clean when you're as sad as you are. And so that's why I tell anybody that's out there, that has kids out here, whatever, if you want your kids to get clean, call them, tell them you love them, don't give up on them. Because when you don't feel like there's much left for you out there, or there's too much damage has been done, it's impossible to get clean. You know, I didn't realize how sick I was. I keep telling my buddy, he's a doctor up here, you know, I'm going to rehab tomorrow, and I go in there and then something happens and I have to leave or something. And I saw him the other day when I was in the hospital, and he wasn't even happy to see me. He was like, and I had told him not to get his hopes up. I didn't want to disappoint him. But the disappointment that was in my friend's face from this just kills you, you know?
Right,
and, you know, from being a successful person, nobody wants to be known as a junkie. I never in a million years thought I would have touched heroin. And
what can somebody do to help you? I mean, if there was anything...
There's nothing that anybody can do. I mean, you know, I talked to my friend about this too, and one of the things I think I'd want to do if I can get my shit together, and I talked to him about this, is like, get a building and open up lockers and showers and a mail place for homeless people. You don't need a place to stay or whatever, but like a place to lock up your stuff, because when you get evicted from an apartment or you don't have a place to go, like I lost everything.
Right.
You know, your grandfather's watch.
You just have to leave it all.
Everything. Yeah. Or it was stolen from you. And you know, you get a driver's license, you get a new social security card, get a couple of dollars saved up because you're going to get a job or get an apartment. I was going to get a hotel, get a shower so I can get interviews again. And got robbed at gunpoint by like a 12-year-old kid. You know?
Down here.
Yeah. So it's like, it's impossible to get ahead if you don't have a place that you can store your stuff safely without being robbed.
Wow, I didn't realize
It's
it was that
impossible without
bad.
the credentials. And you know, I worked for a guy for 3 days sanding drywall, and I didn't have a place to shower. So I'm like covered in drywall for 3 days, and then the guy ends up paying me $60 for 3 days of work. What the hell are you gonna do about it? You know? But like everybody says, I'm choosing this lifestyle. I don't have to. I mean, I know I could probably reach out to resources, but there's a point where like you're ashamed, and you're just so broken that
Dude,
you don't want it.
I care
So-
about you, man. I don't look down. I mean,
I
You're
told you I do this
smart. You
interview
can
because
tell you're really
I wanted
smart.
you to understand the truth for like a lot of people. It's not that people want to do this. People don't want to hurt their families, you know? People are hurting themselves when they're down here doing this. And that's what people don't understand. You know what I mean? You're hurting yourself because you hurt. And if doing heroin gives you fucking 2 hours of solace, and that's all you get out of it in a day, then that's what you get out of it in a day. Me, I don't anymore. I don't get any joy out of doing dope at all. It just makes me not feel sick. It makes me not hurt
wow.
physically. You know, and I hate giving these assholes my money and help them perpetuate the violence that occurs down here.
Right.
But I also, I almost want it. I'm afraid if I wasn't down here, like how many people would have died, you know?
Right, because you're
being
probably
neglected.
saving lives too
People
at the same
step
time.
around my town when somebody's on the sidewalk. Everybody calls 911. Here, people step over somebody on the L. People are passed out on the L, laying in the middle of the L, overdosing, and people walk right over top of them.
I've Narcan so many people just.
Probably pissed off a lot of guys, huh?
That's
you know?
why I carry it, bro.
But, you know, and a guy was freezing outside of my house when I first moved to Philly. He was drunk, passed out in front of my house, drunk, in a t-shirt in the middle of wintertime, and people were like, he's just drunk. He's gonna fucking die if you don't do anything.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it's somebody else's problem. And the problem in Philly is that nobody wants to accept responsibility. It's like the neighborhoods. Clean up your own fucking neighborhood, dude. Pick up the trash out front. You know, just because you're homeless also doesn't mean you have to fucking throw trash on the ground. Kensington doesn't have to look like this.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, I mean, there's a lot of things variables that go into it again, but like I said, if you guys didn't get anything out of it, just, if you got kids down here, loved ones, you know, just don't give up on them. I mean, when you give up on them, you know, you've given them a death sentence.
Right.
So,
listen, man. Well, Andrew.
it was a pleasure. I appreciate you letting me talk to you.